Hey everyone, welcome to Just Therapy UK. My name is Ems, I'm a qualified therapist and trained life coach, and in these videos I hope to give you some tips and tools to navigate your life and hopefully help you become the best version of yourself, or maybe certainly help the relationships that you have currently in your life. So if you'd like to know more, then please think about subscribing to this channel, and if you do like this video, then please do give it a thumbs up and think about having a comment below, because that does help the algorithm. So that being said, let's dive right in. So hey there, so in this video I would like to talk about conversation, communication. Why is this beneficial and how to communicate effectively? I don't know about you, but have you ever been in situations when you just feel that you're constantly bickering, or you're just not able to get through to somebody, and you're just frustrated and you want to communicate but you don't know how, or every time you do the other person doesn't listen? And I have this a lot with clients of mine, whether I'm working with couples or whether I'm working with families, whatever it is. So most of the time communication comes up a lot, and for the most part it is because people do not know how to communicate effectively. So if you are one of these, then this video will hopefully be for you. So let's look at relationships. So you're in a relationship perhaps with a partner and you just feel that you just cannot communicate. You feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. It's like you try to talk to them and they just don't listen, and you just don't know what to do about that. Well, the first thing I would say is pick your battles, because men and women are very, very different. So it does depend on the type of relationship, whether you are in a relationship with the opposite sex or whether you are in a relationship with the same sex. Sometimes you have to start to find out how a person communicates, because not everyone does the same type of thing. It's the same as in, like, not everyone's emotional. Some people are shut off from emotion through experiences. So you really have to find out, again, about the person that you are in the relationship with. How do they communicate? When is the best time to communicate with them? Because a lot of the time I hear people say, oh, when the person's coming from work, they will then start trying to have a conversation with them. But then that person is absolutely exhausted. And so this person is not receptive to that conversation. So you really have to firstly pick your battles. And so that means firstly, looking at what it is that you want to discuss. Is it something that really is about the relationship in general, or is it something that is about you? Now, if it's something about you, then it is a really good rule of thumb to try and work through some things yourself, because that is where a lot of your inner strength comes from, is working through things yourself and coming up to those answers. Now, if at some points it is about the other person and you want to sit down and have a conversation with them, then the best thing to try and do is to pick a time to do that. So if, for example, there's something really important that's coming up in the friendship or the relationship, etc., or even family, you can do a once a week check-in, which is what some families do or some relationships do, where they sit down, they have dinner, and then once a week they kind of check in with each other of how things are going or progressing. Is there anything that's come up they need to talk about? Because communication, to me, is the absolute cornerstone of any relationship, no matter what it is. And that goes alongside with trust as well, and listening, because it's not just about the communication, it's also listening to the other person, because a lot of the time people pretend to be listening and they actually are just shutting off and they're not. So spending that time actually working through those issues is crucial to a healthy, functioning relationship. So you can spend that time, like once a week, creating a time when you will sit down, perhaps after dinner, and have that conversation where you can kind of check in with each other. Now, I appreciate that that's not always doable, especially if you're in a larger family. So then it's an immediate situation. So then it becomes, okay, so what do we do if something is really coming up and it needs to be talked about like now? But again, I would say, pick the moment, because if you are wanting to talk to somebody and they are really tired, or they're not well, or there's something going on with them and you're just getting that vibe that they're not in the right place, it would be absolutely pointless to sit down and have a conversation, because then when the other person doesn't react the way you want to, it can then spiral out of control. So always find the right time and the right way to talk about that situation. And once you then have that, it is then important to just understand what is your stuff and what is theirs. So if, for example, if something has come up for you, sit back before you have this conversation and think to yourself, do you know what, is that something that's about me? If it's not, and it's genuinely about the other person, like they're doing or saying something that you don't like, or it's triggering you, again, you can still look at why it's triggering you. But so that it doesn't happen again, when you found the right time to have that conversation with them, you can sit them down and say, look, okay, this is what's come up for me. This is what happened when you said this or when you did that. I realize that this is a reaction that I'm having. However, I would really appreciate it if you would rephrase how you talk to me or rephrase what you do. And hopefully then you will be able to communicate that effectively. Now, I appreciate that this is not always conducive. It's not always possible to have those times to sit down. But in which case then, if you are reacting to something, you would then have to look at why. So if you are having an argument with your partner, the best thing to do would be to step back and kind of go, you know what, this is getting out of control. We are getting angry with each other, and then it starts to get personal. So step back, take that time to bring yourself back to an even level. Because if you are in a heightened state, all that's going to happen is you're going to come in at a level, they're going to come in at a level, and it's this continuous one-upmanship. The other thing it's important to recognize is if you go in with the attitude of I'm right, you're wrong, then that is not going to get you anywhere. Because in any argument, for the most part, you are going to get two different perspectives. Now, that's not to say that perhaps in one situation that you might be right. However, if the other person doesn't see your perspective or doesn't agree with you, you're just going to butt heads. So then you can kind of come at it from the stance of, well, this is what I think, this is what I feel. I would like to get your take on that. And if they're coming at you with, well, I think you're wrong, then you can kind of come in and say, well, I appreciate that that's what you think. However, this is not how I think. So I think we're just going to have to just disagree here. And you need to get into a place in your relationship where there are going to be times when you are not going to line up in the way you think. You're not going to think the same. You're not going to be the same, because you are both two very individual people. So the way to do that is to communicate effectively. Always try to look at your own perspective on things. Take responsibility for your part in something. So if you're acting a certain way or being a certain way, rather than saying you made me feel like this, you take ownership in that and go, you know what, I felt this way, I reacted this way. Why? Why did I do that? Everything is a chance to learn about yourself. And if you then, in a sense, don't put that pressure on the other person in the relationship or the friendship, where you're almost creating them to be responsible for your very happiness, it can actually make things a lot healthier, because the other person, it's not their responsibility to make you happy. It's not. No matter how much you might try and look at that, it's not. Your responsibility to make yourself happy is within you. Now, I'm not saying that they should be going out of their way to do things to create you to be unhappy. Of course, they shouldn't be doing that either. But if you're in a bad mood and you've got a partner that, in a sense, is going through their own stuff, you know, what can then happen is that you're expecting them to put their stuff to one side to make you happy again. And that's not healthy. So that's the way to do that, is to really understand each other and read each other in such a way that if you're both going through something, you can still communicate effectively. If you are both in a bad mood, or you're both feeling hungry, tired, or whatever it is, that is not the time to be having those type of conversations. You know, if you're somebody that is in a friendship and you've got a friend that just doesn't listen to you, if you cannot sit them down and say, look, this is what is going on for me. I'm feeling hurt, or I'm feeling upset, or whatever it is, or even if I feel angry, always remember that anger is a secondary emotion. So even if you're feeling angry and it's presenting itself, there'll be something else going on underneath that. So if you are feeling angry, ask yourself why. Why am I feeling angry? What is it about what they've said or done that is creating me to feel angry? And once you've got that answer, some of the time you don't even need to have a conversation with somebody, because you recognize that this is completely your stuff. You are being massively triggered by somebody or something that's been said, in which case that's up to you to work on. You know, it's not always beneficial to have to say to the other person, you have to change. You have to change to meet my needs. Because sometimes the other person may not want to change certain aspects of themselves. There's always ways and room to compromise, but if you are massively triggered by things, then it is not necessarily always fair, depending on what it is, to then say to your friend or your partner or your family member, you need to change to make me feel better. You are only responsible for what you say and what you do. How someone perceives that is entirely their issue. And this is why, what I've said before, you can walk into a room and tell a joke to 10 people, 9 people will find that funny, and then there'll be one person that doesn't find it funny and always offended by it. Does that mean that what you've said is wrong? No, it just means that the way that person has perceived it is different to the other 9 people. And then that's something, if they choose to, that they should look at. It is not for them to then say, you mustn't say that joke now because it's wrong. And if you look at what is happening in society today, that's exactly what's happening. My feelings are hurt. I don't like what you've just said, so you must never say that again. Or I don't like what you're doing, so you must never do that again. No, what that means is that you didn't like it, so you then have to take responsibility for that and decide what it is that you want to do about that. So you can either choose not to like somebody, you can choose not to follow them, or not to be in their presence. It doesn't mean to say that person has to change who they are or what they say. That's up to them. You can certainly have a conversation with them, and if they then go, you know what, I actually recognise that probably what I said or did was wrong and you're right, then that's great. That's great. But they don't have to. But what you must do is ultimately take responsibility for yourself. It is not up to somebody else. So you want to communicate effectively. Firstly, look at what is going on for you, why you're reacting to something, and then you can communicate that and say, okay, I've noticed that I reacted to that, and that's a me thing, and I know I've got to look at that, but I really would like to also explore perhaps how we talk to each other. Maybe we are not being as nice to each other as what we should be, or maybe we're not respecting each other as much as what we should be. And it's an opening to then have a larger conversation about what is really kind of going on underneath. Because most of the time when couples are arguing or they're not communicating, it's because there is something going on underneath that you're just not saying to each other. You're both afraid of whatever that truth is. So the first thing is you've got to be honest and open to yourself. And then hopefully you should be able to be in a relationship where you could be open and honest with the person that you're with. And that goes with family, friends, anyone. If you are wanting to have a honest to goodness, healthy relationship, it starts with firstly yourself, in being honest with yourself and taking responsibility for how you behave or the things that you say and do. And then it then becomes, how do I put this into then working with somebody else and having this healthy emotional relationship? And it takes work. You both come into that friendship, relationship, and even if you're going into work colleagues, if someone is challenging you and you're not able to communicate with them, then firstly, you've got to say to yourself, do I need to communicate with them? Why is it bothering me that I can't communicate with them? Because not everyone is going to like you. That's just life. And if that's the case, then if you feel you have to communicate with them, then it is worth trying to sit down with them and say, look, I feel like we're clashing here, and I want to know why. Because I want to work effectively with you, but if I can't, then this is going to create a bit of a toxic work environment, and I don't think either of us want that. So the first thing would always be to own your feelings, own your responsibility in why you're reacting. Where has it come from? Does this person remind you of somebody in your past? Have they said or done something that has reminded you of something that's happened to you? Or you're just getting this vibe that you don't really like that person. I would always take that as a bit of a challenge, because if you don't like somebody, there's a reason. Even if they haven't done anything, there's a reason why you don't like them. So it would be good to explore that, because again, it's a chance to learn about yourself. So communicating effectively really is about, if you're in a heightened emotional state, step back. Do not have any conversations or make any decisions when you are in a heightened emotional state. Always wait till you calm down. Now, that's not to say that you just walk off from it. You can turn around and say to the person that you are getting in this state with, and say, you know what, I want to talk to you. I want to work this out, but I know this is going to escalate if I stay in this. I'm feeling very angry, or whatever it is that's coming up for me. So I'm not ignoring you. I just want to walk away. Now, again, I appreciate that when you start doing this stuff, it is not always as simple as that, and sometimes we just walk out, but that's still better than escalating a situation and creating this full-on argument to happen, which can then get very personal and very hurtful, and a lot of the times things are said that you can't take back. So always try and remember that, you know, you really want to be mindful about how you communicate with somebody, because once it's out there, it is very hard to take back. You know, and it can seriously damage a friendship, relationship, whatever it is, it really can. So if you're in a heightened state, step away from the situation. When you calm down, then try and come back and communicate with that person. And there is always going to be exceptions to the rule. There is always going to be people that you cannot communicate with. No matter how much you work on yourself, you're always going to be met with the odd person that just isn't on that journey with you, doesn't particularly care about communicating with you, and in which case then you've either got to accept that that person is where they're at and not even try, or you can try, and if it's still met with resistance, you can go, you know what, at least I tried, or you can just ignore them altogether and just think, you know what, I'm not even going to go there. You know, you have those choices. You know, and if sometimes you're in a situation like work or family, then just be civil. Just do the bare minimum, be civil. Don't kind of go anywhere further than that, because you might be in a situation where you just have to present civility. So yeah, so let me know what you think in the comments. Have any of you ever been in a situation like this before, or are you in a situation now, you know, where you really do struggle to communicate with somebody? And hopefully the things that I've just said to you will really, really help you. Like I've said to you, the worst time to communicate is when you are feeling a heightened emotional state. So the best advice from me to you is step back from that. Step back, take time, then come back, and hopefully own your own stuff. You know, always come in with I feel, not you made me, because then that gets someone defensive. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and you would like to not miss future uploads, then please think about doing so. You can follow me on TikTok, where I do little videos over there. You can also follow my other channel, which is Tea and Therapy. All the links will be in the description box below. If you'd like to buy me a cup of tea as a thank you, then that would be gratefully received. It's not obligatory, but you can. And yeah, and that's it. So I will see you in the next video. So take care, stay safe, and remember, you are amazing. Okay, bye.